him, and we may have a vacancy in this parliament.
Dr Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I rise on behalf of the Green Party to speak to the first reading of the Financial Reporting Bill. The Green Party will be supporting this bill to Select Committee. What I like about this bill is it has an element of proportionality. And I think that it's important that around financial reporting that an element and a sense of proportionality is important. And that means that under this bill, essentially we're going to be relaxing some company reporting requirements, which we think is the right thing to do in certain circumstances. So non-large, non-issuing companies will no longer have to prepare general purpose financial reports, as they're currently required to do under the Companies Act. Now, we think that that is a sensible move. But we do think that it needs to be that we want to have a closer look at this bill in Select Committee before we commit to supporting it through the rest of its stages, because we do need to look at the other side of the equation to make sure that there is sufficient regulatory oversight around financial reporting. I mean, one of the lessons that came out of the global financial crisis was the need to make sure there is sufficient regulatory oversight of companies, and particularly finance companies in New Zealand, sufficient regulatory oversight. And so the general trend, if you like, towards financial reporting has been towards tightening the rules around financial reporting, around companies and particularly financial companies and deposit takers. This bill, in a sense, goes against that trend. In the sense that there will be a number of companies now who are non-large, non-issuing companies who actually will have, if you like, a weakening of the financial reporting requirements. However, we think that that does make sense and is a proportionate response. Legislation and regulation needs to be smart, it needs to be proportionate to the risks involved, it needs to be proportionate to the size of the company and the economic significance of the company. And we think the way in which this bill attempts to do that makes a great deal of sense. I also agree, I think, with the comments of Michael Woodhouse earlier, that it needs to be tied to the some changes around the Income Tax Act. The Institute of Chartered Accountants have done some really good work in terms of looking at how we can simplify income tax for small and micro business in order to make it easier for them. And I think that if we have some of these changes tied to some of the changes around the Income Tax Act to reduce compliance pressure, particularly on small and micro businesses, then together, actually, it's quite a positive outcome. Now, we're yet to see where the government will go with the Institute of Chartered Accountants proposals. The Green Party adopted those proposals at the last election, and they were part of our election platform. And we think they go alongside the kinds of changes that are being proposed in the financial reporting bill. Perhaps the dissonant note, if I may, kind of hit one in kind of talking about this, and it's slightly outside the scope of the bill probably, but I do think that in other jurisdictions we've also seen the rise of what you might call environmental reporting. So reporting against a set of environmental indicators. The UK has produced, it's a voluntary set of reporting indicators. They're reporting guidelines for UK business, and the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs in the United Kingdom has produced this set of voluntary guidelines to provide an attempt to provide some consistency in reporting against environmental key performance indicators. It would be great to see in New Zealand we make some steps in this direction. We're not suggesting that it be made compulsory at this point, and so it wouldn't be going in a piece of legislation, but even having some voluntary guidelines to provide consistency around reporting against environmental key performance indicators, I think would be a step forward. The United Nations Environment Programme has likewise produced some guidelines for reporting against environmental key performance indicators, and I think it would be just tremendous to see us add that level of reporting to the financial reporting as well, where it's appropriate. And so in the future it would be great to see that as well. But in terms of where this bill goes, we think that it's a sensible bill. We'll be supporting it to Select Committee. We'll be very interested to get the submissions on at the Select Committee to see if we've got the balance right between reducing the requirements for financial reporting for those companies that are non-large, non-issuing companies, but also making sure that we've got sufficient financial reporting requirements in place where there is significant risk, and of course for deposit takers and issuers of capital instruments. So for those reasons we'll be supporting it to Select Committee. Thank you, Mr Speaker.
Jonathan Young.
Mr Speaker, I'm very pleased to stand in support of the